to a very special episode of Superhero Stuff You Should Know. I am once again the man who knows too much about Batman, Ben Wan, and with me, as usual, is my co-host, Andruvius. Is that your
Lord
name?
Andruvius Maximilian the Third.
Also with us is...
It's me, kiddies, not Uncle Joker this time. This is Zachary Jackson Brown. I think this is the first time I've actually put my real name up here, but
Lame.
just trying to. That's right. I learned from you, Andrew. I was just trying to be a little bit lamer today and normal.
I see.
And returning to the show is John Hefner.
Hi. Thank you for having me back on for this one, especially this one.
Yes, so the first time we brought John on the show, it was to discuss the Batman newspaper strip from 1989 through 1991, which we called the original Batman 89 sequel comic. But today we're joined by a very special guest who was one of the main writers on that strip, and that is Bill Messner-Loebs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excuse me.
No problem.
Yes, I'm pleased to be here. I'm pleased to be anywhere.
It's it's an honor to have you here, and I first want to sort of re-acknowledge John and sort of introduce you to John as part of the reason why we're here, because John maintains a Tumblr called The Daily Batman, which I will pull up right now, but that is the whole reason why a lot of us know about the strip in the first place, is because of the fact that he promoted it and sort of let all of us know about this. So for viewers unfamiliar with this comic strip, be sure to check out our previous episode about it, as well as the comic strip itself through John's Tumblr before jumping back here for the interview. But obviously, I wanted to make sure that John was here with us, and John provided a lot of the questions as well that we have for you, because he's been such a big fan of this comic strip, and so are we. So let's get started then on the newspaper strips. So while we do credit you as the main writer on this run of newspaper strips, you weren't the first to do this. You basically, hold on, lost my place. First off, it was Max Allan Collins who had been doing the writing, along with Marshall Rogers doing the art. Share with us then, from what you can recall, how you ended up replacing Max Allan Collins as the writer on these.
There was I'm rapidly trying to remember if I was sworn to secrecy about any of this, because there was so many things that were involved with DC at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You had a whole bunch of people, like sitting in a closet and getting on each other's nerves, and so Max Allan Collins and Mike Gold, who was the Uber editor of DC at the time, had been really, really good friends, and then as such things happen, they were less good friends, and so Max I'm trying to think if these stories should all be, well, we just had creative differences, but that isn't always true. It's the creative differences were sparked by the fact that at some point you just decide you hate each other. And so and I think because if you'll remember, Max was also doing the regular Batman book for a while, and got involved in the whole Jason Todd getting killed or having to be killed thing. And thankfully, I was not really involved in very much of that.
Mhm.
But it was, they decided that they would actually open it up as a referendum on Jason Todd, and you could vote on whether or not he should be killed. And I know this because that Thanksgiving, all my cousins we all were gathered around the groaning board, or handing out our Midwestern turkey. And why did you let them do that, Bill?
Why did you let them kill Robin?
Yeah, why did you let them kill Robin? And why are and they're actually asking people, putting it up to a vote as to whether or not a child should be murdered, and so forth. And and all the real answers to that are like, well, actually, you do know that he's a drawing, don't you? And
He's real to some.
and then he's and it's more of a concept, and besides, it was an embarrassment that he hadn't caught on with anybody, so of course they killed him, because that's what DC does. Well, none of those answers were the answers they wanted to hear. And I also tried to explain to them that DC did not really consult its freelancers as to what sort of editorial judgments they should make over their most popular characters. And so I honestly do not remember if Max at that point, how much Max was being blamed for this whole thing, because everyone was realizing that everything that they were doing to make things better, like eliminating Jason Todd and so forth, was just making it worse. And because if this was happening in Michigan over Thanksgiving, it was happening everywhere. And to say, well, the fans get a chance to decide. Nobody is actually going to vote to have something less interesting happen.
That's very true.
They're always, if the death, no death, they're always going to flip it over to death, because there's no there's no sense of responsibility for this. It's just, and he is, after all, a drawing. And so all of that, and so I think it was somewhere along this at this point that that people liked the sort of approach in general that Max had been taking, and he got a chance to write the Dick Tracy strip instead. And so he just, no, everybody's blaming me, I'm going to go away. And so I had just joined up more or less with DC, and what I was supposed to be there for was doing Wasteland, their psychological horror comic, but that had taken a long time to organize. It took a much longer time to organize than they thought it would, because there's you don't just have one writer, and you ended up with 2 writers and 5 artists, and so it it just seemed like it was just taking forever. And so Mike Gold said to me, well, would you be interested at all in doing well, I can't tell you what you'd be doing yet, but it's a satire and using one of DC's most established characters, and very political.
Interesting.
And
so
I assumed that Howie Chaykin was leaving Blackhawk, and so I spent a week reading about Blackhawk and air combat and World War II and all that. Well, it turned out to be the Flash. And I said, the Flash is political? And he said, well,
it is now.
I guess it is now. Yeah, it's sort of political, and besides, it's our character, so we can be political if we want him to be. So that was I sat down. Mike very quickly had to put out fires somewhere else at DC, so I ended up with another editor whose name is Barbara. Her name was Barbara, and it was
Randall Kessel.
Barbara Randall. Yes.
Yeah.
And we were pretty good friends, and she was very pleased with as soon as I did the thing where you had all the rogues show up at a sort of a desolate motel, and invite Wally, and he shows up. She said, well, we obviously have the right man. And I was actually able to sort of explain the main problem that everybody's always had with the Rogues Gallery, which is you have people that can turn base metals into gold. They can control the weather. They can they have all these extraordinary powers, and yet what they're using them for is to knock over banks and jewelry stores. And so I think I was the first one to actually explain that, because my explanation or Wally's explanation for that was that that Barry did that, got them to fight him, and turned it into a challenge. And so they were doing that rather than doing what they should have been doing, which was actually trying to take over the world.
Yeah.
So that was fun, and actually was able to bring everybody back 4 or 5 times from that initial meeting. And so let's see. That I think was so that was the regular book, and now I should be telling you about the actual comic strip, and and I don't know how many of you have actually written comic strips before, but they're enormously complicated. It's like trying to assemble a rotary engine while it's running. Because you've got like your 3 panels, and the first panel is supposed to be doing summarizing or reminding everybody what was in the last strip, and then you have one panel that will advance the action, and then you have another panel that will foreshadow what's going to happen in the next strip. And that's and so, and then when you get into the weekend, not all newspapers have Saturday editions, but some of them do. So you have to figure out a way to do your 3-panel strip on Saturday that doesn't do anything. It doesn't. And then you get to Sunday, and Sunday is usually either 3 tiers, usually with the title overhead, or 2 tiers. So you drop out that top panel, but of course it doesn't drop out everywhere. You have to do something with it, and then you have to and then you have to do the and so then you have like these 2 tiers that, so you might have 4 4 panels, 5 panels, or you might have still 3 panels, and you just sort of have to decide how many you're going to have for that particular week. And look, but you can't actually advance the story very much because some people aren't getting the Sundays. And so it's basically a story that gives you a deep sense of your personal unworth, because you just you can never quite do it right. I was pleased that I was able to do it for as long as they wanted to run it, because and I also didn't have to worry about actually introducing my own characters, because my own villains, because everyone is very, very, certainly back then, was very, very interested in creating in preserving their own little cadre of villains. So the first villain was the introduction of the Joker. That was the one that Max did, and then I had
Catwoman. Wait, no, Penguin. Sorry.
Yeah, Penguin, and then I think, and then after that was that Two-Face, or was there one in between?
Then you brought the Joker back for a whole storyline with people trying to take over the city. Sorry, yeah, and then after that you had a Joker on trial, and then you built up to Two-Face all throughout that, and then Two-Face showed up, and so yeah, you spent several story arcs building up Two-Face. It was pretty great.
Yeah, that was, and the one thing I was always very pleased with was because I and because I was really pushing the fact that they had actually known each other since college and were good guys, and you know, he's desperately trying to keep Two-Face from not being a total villain. And I think some of that worked its way into the movies. But at the end, they face off against each other, and Bruce actually takes off his mask, and he says, "I've taken my mask off. You take your mask off now." And of course, he didn't actually mean he had to rip off his face, because that would have made him psychotic.
That'd be a completely different ending. Yeah.
His face has gone through so much already.
We have it pulled up right here as well for our YouTube audience of that ending, and we definitely sung a lot of praises for that in the last episode where we covered that. And we definitely have a whole bunch of questions as well on your take on Harvey, but I'll pass on the next question over to John.
Yes, okay. So I was wondering, how did you approach the task of continuing where Collins left off? Were you given any editorial direction, like to tie it in further with the Batman '89 film, or did you have free reign to kind of chart your own course?
Well, basically, we thought that the second movie was going to come up a lot faster than it did, and so essentially, it just the impetus of us doing a Batman comic strip began to fade away. Was harder and harder to keep the newspapers that we had and all of that. It would have been nice if they had actually, arranged it so that we had another movie to sort of give us another boost, but they didn't. And so that was some of it. I was there was let's see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I was. Mike Gold was still the editor for the newspaper strip, and I was trying to. I did sort of a. It looked like I got involved in a prison riot at one point, and I felt like it turned out that the prisoners had been promised things, and they weren't being and they hadn't been delivered, and so Batman felt like he had to deliver on some of this stuff and have sort of a soft ending for the prison riot. And Mike said, "Well, no, you can't do that. You can't. It has to be. You can do anything you want with Bruce Wayne, but Batman has to have a certain attitude towards crime and authority and all of that." And that was one of the reasons that I had Batman pull off his mask at the end, because I didn't know whether I was going to get my head handed to me for that, but that was to show one of his iconic villains who he really was, but I had been told I could do anything I wanted to with Bruce Wayne, so there you go.
True. It's technically Bruce Wayne doing that.
Yeah. And so I very much wanted something. I wonder what it was. I oh well, somewhere where I was talking, I remembered there was also the origin of Robin
Ah, yes.
was in there too, and that distracted me from being coherent. So let's see what. Try asking me another question and
Okay. All
Andrew.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, do I call you William, Bill, Mr. Messner-Loebs? What should I call you, first of all?
well, Mr. Loebs was my father.
Okay. So William, Will?
Although Messner was actually my wife's name. So, but I am Bill.
Bill.
That's
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And,
All right.
In fact, I've always thought it really funny that you will occasionally see people who are very formal say William quotation marks Bill Loebs. And
Right,
it's
right,
like really? Really? Is there a? I guess it could also be Will, like Will Eisner, but genuinely, do you have to explain that Bill is short for William at this stage?
That's very true.
That's true. All right.
So,
go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Well, we've heard you work with Carmine Infantino, and we heard that he was a quote unquote spirited character. First off, I want to know, was he in the mafia?
Carmine, as far as I know, wasn't.
Okay.
Although Will Eisner told me once that when I had a run-in with some of the guys, and he said, DC actually was created to launder mob money.
Yeah, I've heard stuff like that.
He was teaching a course at that time, and you could actually hear the pencils dropping all over the classroom.
Of course, money laundering 101.
Yeah, really.
Okay. Okay. If Carmine Infantino wasn't in the mob himself, but could you explain just what was it like working with Mr. Infantino?
Well, of course, you have to remember, Carmine Infantino was the guy who was writing or drawing the Flash when I was a kid. So
Okay.
it was really a legendary kind of thing. And I am not the kind of person who can really sidle up to my idols right away. I wish I had talked to him more, but as somebody said about Carmine, so you're the new writer, and it's like you can smell the cigars.
Oh man.
And but the idea that we were so many generations apart really at that point. I could talk to Will Eisner and really talk to him about how much fun it is to do comics and all this, but Carmine had been publisher of DC. He had done a whole bunch of other things, and to even try to talk to him about how we wanted to advance the art of storytelling and that he just would not have understood really. But I do have a story, because when I did as I said, I was doing. It's a little like having a plastic bug burrowing into your ear.
Yeah.
The but when we were doing the Robin storyline, I wrote and basically it was exactly the sort of story about Robin that you would expect. I did the origin and the Flying Graysons and Splat and the and you know, he talks himself into being Robin and all of that. And I had to keep it as far away from Jason Todd as I possibly could at that point. And so, but he, but there was a point at which I did the Robin's utility belt, and then explained all the things that were in it and so forth. And so I had that as a background, and then Robin eventually gets locked into a car, and the car is driven into the river, and then he has to escape over the weekend. And I figured out a way to do it with all the stuff that I had put in there. Well, at this point, Mike Gold had gone off to put out yet another fire at DC, and I had another editor. And I actually do not remember her name, but she was also very nice. And she, but she said, you know, Bill, we have a problem because, you know, you've shown how to do you have a way of actually getting him out of this trunk? And I said, yes, I can do it with all the things that people have seen originally in the story. And he said, and she said, do you absolutely know that? Do you absolutely know that everything that you put into that script was drawn? Well, honestly, no, I don't, because I was not getting the paper in Detroit that was running the Batman newspaper strip. I was that was the Republican paper, and we subscribed to the Democratic paper, and so that was. And I said, well, no, I actually can't. And she said, well, you mean they didn't ever send you copies of the art as it was coming out? No. You're assuming that they respect the writers. and they you know, and they obviously don't. So she said, well, I'm going to have to go and actually get a copy of this and see if Carmine actually drew everything that you put into your script. Because if not, then there's going to have to be a plan B for how you free him. So for 2 hours, while I waited for her to call back, I tried to think up a plan B. There was no plan B. There was only the plan A.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talked to her. I talked to them, and and she came on and she said, yes, he drew every last single thing that you wrote in your script.
Yeah.
And so I felt really good about that. And I was very inclined to call up Carmine and say, what? I'm glad you're a professional. You saved my ass. You know, it would have been incredibly embarrassing for me. None of these were concepts that I knew that Carmine would really understand, you know. Of course he drew everything that was on the script. That's his job.
Right.
It's, you know, it isn't. And so I never did. I did think that, you know, the next time I met him at a comic book convention, because he occasionally would come in for comic book conventions, especially the big Motor City convention here in Detroit. And I might actually have something to talk to him about for once, and I would do that. And so he appeared. He appeared at the. It took about 2 years, but he showed up, and he was all surrounded by minders and all that. And I said, you know, could and so I walked over and I said, you know, hi, my name is Bill Messner-Loebs. I was the writer on the Batman newspaper strip, and and he said, Bill who? And I said, Bill Messner-Loebs. I was the writer on the Batman newspaper strip. He said, oh, no, I was the artist on the Flash. And I said, well, yes, you were. I grew up reading that, but no, see, I was the writer, and then I looked around and I realized why there were so many minders around him. And I said, and I grew up reading The Flash, and you were always my favorite artist. So if you want to say something nice to one of your idols, don't hold off to do it. You should always do it as soon as you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Zach, you had a question about Harvey Dent stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about Harvey Dent for a little bit because, as you were talking about earlier, this appears to be the first comic where Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent are friends, and that's something that carried over into Batman the Animated Series, the Telltale video games, and the New 52s. So, what led to this creative decision to make Harvey and Bruce friends?
Well, we had a kind of sense in the first Batman, the first Michael Keaton Batman, about that they could be allies, and so I just sort of took it from there. They're about the same age, and they're really, you know, in any of the flashbacks and stuff that they did about Harvey Dent in Batman that I'd ever read, there wasn't much talk at all about what exactly how he was as a district attorney. But I figured, you know, he would be the sort of district attorney that Batman would like. Mm-hmm. And there seemed to be, as I say, a certain amount of attempt at rapprochement between Batman and the DA. Because after all, you know, I mean, in Gotham City, you're either hideously corrupt and psychotic, or you're sort of a guy that you can get along with. And
Yeah.
so that I thought that was probably what was going on there. If he was friends with Jim Gordon, he was probably friends with Harvey Dent. So that was, and again, you know, this was what Bruce Wayne was doing, and I was allowed to do anything I wanted to with Bruce Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just went ahead and did it. And, you know, I mean, it's not like Mike Gold couldn't pick up a phone.
True.
Although, frankly, there is so little communication that goes on in these big corporations. It takes them years and years and years to actually find out what you're doing in a different corner of the universe. But
Wow.
I think I'm destroying all of your
Our perceptions of what goes on behind the scenes.
Story about DC? Nah.
Well, I had a suspicion that this was something that was your decision and not something that some big editor had told you to do. You know, it seemed like that was something that came from a writer.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that, you know, especially this, because, you know, DC had the chance to join the Creators Syndicate, which we all found amusing. Even the folks at DC found that amusing, that they were part of the Creators Syndicate. But with this new Batman, but it really wasn't, you know, it wasn't strongly connected to the comic books at that point, and it wasn't really strongly connected to the movies. So I don't think they were watching the Hen House very closely either.
It's probably true too.
Unless I made you know, Batman too much of a liberal wimp. But that was the only thing that I ever really got feedback about.
From DC?
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
When I was trying to have him fix this prison riot.
Was Carmine Republican?
It would be very difficult. Republican meant a little something different back then.
Okay.
Than it does now. It you know, you didn't necessarily have to be psychotic. You know?
Oh man.
But it helps.
But
what are you talking about?
But you know, it was you know, and honestly, you know, I'm up here in Livingston County, and it's a pretty Republican area anyway. But and most of my poor abused relatives are all Republican too. But anyway, we had a. Was he? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Okay,
if he was Republican, because
I was just doing a Hail Mary pass on that one.
Find out all there is on Carmine.
Yeah.
There's, yeah.
So this feedback, though, that you got in terms of Batman being "quote unquote" too much of a liberal wimp, this is from just to clarify
from Mike Grell,
Mike
Gold, saying that.
Okay.
Just,
okay.
You know, Batman has to have a certain attitude. He has to face a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do anything you want with Bruce Wayne. So
Interesting.
he may have ended up regretting that conversation.
Well, I know we probably don't because of the fact that there was a lot with Bruce Wayne that you did in the strip that I think feeds into, as you said, a lot of the Harvey Dent stuff that comes up later on in other adaptations. So even if that was stuff that Mike Gold personally, whether or not he cared for it or not, we don't know. But that's definitely something that other people caught on to as like, oh, hey, that's a good idea. Let's continue off of that. We see that in the animated series and the video games, everything that Zach listed out as well. I had another question in terms of the Harvey stuff, which is that there is sort of the first time in the newspaper strip, we sort of have this famous image that I'm pulling up for the YouTube audience of the trio of Commissioner Gordon, Harvey Dent, and Batman on a rooftop. Dent's obviously a little bit more anti-Batman than in other interpretations in this, but this is kind of the first time that they're up here together and discussing a case. And we would end up seeing this in another comic that would come up, which was around the same time, which was the Eye of the Beholder, and then that gets carried over into the Long Halloween, which then gets carried over into the Dark Knight. It's just basically one thing feeding into another, you could say. So I guess one of my questions on this is, was this somewhat of a coincidence that there we kind of have the development of Harvey Dent happening around the same time, both in the comics and the newspaper strip? Because as you said, like there's not really a ton of there wasn't really a ton of connection between the comics and the comic strip at the time, the newspaper strip at the time. But it looks like around 1990, something was in the air. You wanted to explore Harvey more. Andrew Helfer, who wrote The Eye of the Beholder, which is on the left here, wanted to explore Harvey more. Your comic strip has the two-headed coin be something that was a gift that Bruce gave him, so it's symbolic to him. And then it's a gift from, well, not really a gift, but it's something from his abusive father in the comic version. And this is kind of the first time that Harvey even has a coin that has value to him as opposed to just being the mobster's coin, which is in the Two-Face origin. So I guess the question is this partially just you talking to Andrew Helfer about anything, or is this all just coincidence that this is happening at the same time?
Well, I think if you think about things, very often you'll come to the same sort of conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
No, Andy and I did not really do that much chatting.
Mm-hmm.
No, we didn't do that much chatting.
Gotcha.
He was sort of in a different part of the DC universe.
Mm-hmm.
And also, freelancers really didn't get a chance to talk that much to high-level editors either.
I hear
he was my editor for a while on the Justice League International that I wrote. But that was about the closest we ever came.
Gotcha. All right.
Remind me there. I should just know this off the top of my head, but I don't. Who? I'm trying to remember an inker. Vinnie Coletta. Vinnie Coletta was an and he was the art director who informed me that I would never ever work for DC because my stuff was too terrible.
Okay.
And from his point of view, my pre-Journey stuff was pretty crude. I remember him sitting at a drawing table and having big chains draping over his chest hair. And it was and my friend Mike Gustovich had gone in with me to try to break into DC, and Mike actually got work from that meeting. But I felt like I had completely lost any chance I'd ever had to work in comics, and Mike had to keep me from throwing myself into New York traffic on the way back.
Jeez.
Okay.
It gave me a certain amount of pleasure to find out that the thing that people knew Vinnie Coletta about was actually he was connected. For one thing, he used
there you
to
go,
bring minor mob people into DC and prostitutes.
It's a comics game, baby.
And so, yeah, he.
Oh shit. Go on.
Well, Mike Gold told me a story where he was. They were visiting Vinnie Coletta at his palatial estate in California, and he said that was the day I realized that we knew that Vinnie Coletta was turning into a hack, because he was they said, well, he said, I just got a new contract and I can pay for this and all I have to do is like 10 pages a day. And he said, inking 10 pages a day? How can you possibly do that? And he said, well, you just instead of having like instead of having a big like all this detail and all that shit that they put in to the pencils, you just do lines. You do these like Flash Gordon lines over the back, and so you can probably churn out 8 to 10 pages, and then I'll hire some college kids to do a little bit of inking and fill in the blacks, and it'll be easy.
Jeez.
Bring the prostitutes in to do that job.
Yeah.
I'm sure it happened for at least one panel.
Vinnie Coletta, for what it's worth, his legacy now is basically he's considered the man who ruined Jack Kirby's art.
Yeah, I saw that.
I did hear that. Yeah, that was sort of nice too.
He's pretty well not well remembered by the current. Last generations of fans.
Well, he's also the fellow that was remembered for having created inadvertently the Krusty Bunkers, where Neil Adams and a whole bunch of other people got together and would ink stories where they might have hired Coletta to do them. And so they keep as many pencils away from him as possible.
Yeah. I had heard that.
But he wouldn't get fired because he was connected.
Well, I don't that's the thing. I mean, there were people that were under contract, and Vinny was there for a long time, and
Okay.
so I think that's probably more the answer. And he might have been a nice guy if he'd never pissed you off.
Okay. Oh man.
Before we go to the break, I wanted to give Andrew the next question regarding kind of this visual that we brought up with the last question of the rooftop scene.
Oh yeah. So
now, who is this who wrote this? Do we know?
Well, on the left is Andrew Helfer's Eye of the Beholder, the Two-Face origin. So that's kind of around the same time, also 1990, as your comic strip. So that's why John and I had a discussion back when we did this episode on your newspaper strip on like, wait, which one came first? Because they're both 1990. And John, I think you found that yours actually beat Helfer's to the punch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's that. And then at the top of, on the top right here, we have The Long Halloween from Jeff Loeb, singular, not related, I know. And then underneath that, I think inspired by The Long Halloween, but maybe not having been exposed to the previous versions, was the Dark Knight movie.
Yeah, I think everything has sort of fed into itself over the years, and that was I liked the. I'm trying to think myself. I think all I knew Andrew Helfer from at that point was that really wonderful thing that he did with the Shadow. But and I never really understood how people could be editors and writers both and keep everything straight. But then the other thing was that people were paid so badly as editors at DC that they were all desperate to break in as freelancers as well, which is where all the only money you could actually get was. It's the reason people are always jumping. I mean, like Brian Augustyn and Mark Waid and all those people, as soon as they could, they started to get freelance work, at least from other editors, because that's the only way you could make a living.
That's crazy. I would have thought that the freelancers would have been paid worse than the salaried editors, because I imagine many freelancers would be people who would, I imagine, want to jump at the chance of writing comics and would accept it for peanuts. Some of them. I mean, anyway.
Well, that was certainly the theory that Marvel and DC had, anyway.
Yeah.
That it also depended on how long you'd been there. I mean, I was getting towards the end, I was getting $120 a page for writing. So if you were doing a couple of books, three books, and you weren't being eaten alive with inflation, you could make a pretty good living at that. And of course, if you happen to be writing the Max, then you were actually able to do better than that.
Because Image treated their the talent better.
Well, certainly Sam Keith treated the talent better. I bought a house. I was able to buy a house from what I'm making from the Max, and
oh, nice!
Wow,
that's cool.
He was able to buy a bigger house. And he bought it in California. So.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Even better. Well, to some people anyway. So, when you watch The Dark Knight or any of the Nolan Batman movies, did you feel like some of your work seeped into the movie that you're watching on screen, like something that was definitely part of what you were doing specifically when you were writing Batman? As far as Joker creating chaos or rooftop scenes or whatever?
To me, that's just naturally where Batman would end up, would be on a rooftop.
Right.
And I grew up with the bat signal and Batman coming onto rooftops back when I was, 14 or 15. So it seems like a perfectly natural thing. I would not assume for him to be anywhere else.
Right.
I think Andrew's we're referring to this specific scene with Harvey and Commissioner Gordon, sort of the bonding on there. But I guess that's a natural place for them to meet because of the whole bat signal rooftop, as you were saying.
Yeah, No, I don't think so. I think I actually didn't see much of my work, and of course, I'm actually much more interested, frankly, in the work that seeped into Flash and Wonder Woman
Mm.
Sure.
than I was into Batman, which is a pretty minor part of my life, actually, if you think about it. I was pleased. You like to look back and you say, "Oh, well, I got to write all these characters, and I was able to do this and that." But to actually be able to bear down on characters like Diana, I was honestly very pleased that I got a mention at the end of the Wonder Woman movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was especially pleased because I was there with my wife, and we were sitting there waiting to get out, and she said, "You're there, there."
Mm.
And it turns out that my friends were all over the city, and they were all yelling at the screen because they all got to see my name. So
That's
you know,
awesome.
so that was better than most things.
Imagine.
That's cool.
It's awesome. Well, on that positive note, we're going to take a quick break, but we will be back to discuss more on Harvey Dent and the newspaper strip and what Bill's up to right now. So stay tuned.
All right.
Awesome.
Quick break. Quick break.
Quick break.
I'm going to reset.
In this quarter, on the Greenlit Podcast Network, Chris Sims and Matt Wilson. And in this quarter, VHS oddities, confusing animation, and modern not-so-classics.
Plus snacks, movie fighters.
We watch movies and beat them up.
Lord have mercy, y'all. Do you like hounds? Do you enjoy pooches? Do you find yourself enjoying time spent with that of canines? Talking about dogs, y'all.
As you might have heard, Superhero Stuff You Should Know has now teamed up with BarkBox. For every month, you get a box for your special canine.
Pooches.
Or hounds.
That's right, one free extra month if you go to barkbox.com/superherostuffpod.
Follow the link and you'll get a free extra month valued at $35 and valid for all multi-length plans.
So get the BarkBox for your hound, for your pooch, for your canine.
Your doggo will thank you. Next question I'm going to give to the authority on Two-Face and Harvey Dent himself. John, take it away.
Hi. So your take on Harvey Dent, which I could talk about like at length, but will not here. It was by far the most in-depth we've seen of him up to that point. It really making him a complex character before he became a villain. I wanted to know, why did you decide to make him so much more than just another colorful antagonist? Did you always plan on giving him an arc where he gets redeemed?
Well, you always hope that you can do an arc where he's going to be redeemed. But you always know that you never know when you're going to have the ground cut out from under you. Because you never know when your book is going to be canceled, or your strip is going to be canceled, no matter what promises they've made to you. They will always lie. And I say this not just because it isn't just DC, it isn't just Marvel. It's anybody with power.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at the musical chairs that you have with one director after another ending up on Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad, or it's there's somebody always being undercut, and there's somebody always being brought up because they think he's the fair-haired boy now. And so I sort of knew that, and I sort of knew, we had been half promised that we would be able to maybe last as long as last into the next Batman movie. But which so I was hoping that I would have some room to do some of these other things. But again, I was just being fed villains that Mike Gold wanted to preserve. He because there was really blood on the floors over these villains. You can see that you have if somebody's considered to be a weak editor of a book, then all of a sudden Gorilla Grodd isn't there anymore. He's over here. And Captain Boomerang is gone now too. They would just, strong editors would come in and just lift these charismatic villains out and take them away. And so I and the other thing you ought to keep in mind is that depending on exactly how you count, I was writing either 4 or 5 comics a month when I was doing this. So I had at most a week or a week's worth of writing that I could do on the Batman newspaper strip for that month. And then I had to pretty much forget about it. I was very fortunate because I was writing all kinds of different books. So it wasn't like so these weren't just the same characters with the lines drawn on different parts of their bodies. Dr. Fate and Batman and Flash and Wolverine McAllister. There were a lot of characters, but I was not likely to get them confused in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that was good. And I got Wonder Woman because of Dr. Fate. Come to think of it, I was I brought her on as one of our endless crossover series, and she and Dr. Fate, because Wonder Woman was super tough and Dr. Fate could do almost anything, they ended up having a picnic on the moon. And that just that tickled the current editor of Wonder Woman, and he asked me to come on and do Wonder Woman when they needed somebody new. So that was I'm sort of battling for time here because I'm trying to think of if I ever really thought that I would have more to do with Harvey Dent, and I didn't, because I figured that when we finished that 8-week thing, then there would be another villain that I was supposed to do. So,
Wow.
but I think at the very end, when I got to the point where when I was doing their big confrontation, I knew that the strip was ending at that point. So I did want to give the strip a nice ending to it. I think one of the things that was always buzzing around my head was, should I be bringing Robin back? Because we pretty much just had the intro to Robin, and then I was thinking about other things, and
honestly, I did not miss Robin in the final story. I actually forgot.
But also, you used Robin in the Riddler story you did, which was right before that, and you used him actually really, really well too there. So I felt like Robin had gotten another chance to actually shine outside of his origin, so that you were then able to. It felt like you could just focus on going back to Bruce and Harvey focused stuff with the new villain.
Yeah, it was all planned. It was all planned. So good. So good. I'm glad to hear that. I did a Riddler section too.
Yeah. It was hilarious.
It's hilarious, yes.
It was it was your most humorous story arc, and it was hilarious.
I feel very bad. They were just teetering on the edge of turning on turning Riddler into a full-time private eye.
Yeah.
And and
even that early on.
And that just seemed like that was the way to go. You should have, everybody should. You just can't always have the same kind of person. You just can't, oh, well, we have a whole bunch of criminals and then we have a whole bunch of heroes. And isn't it too bad? I can remember letter column after letter column when I was a kid, and people would write in and say, why don't the heroes just kill off the villains and then everything would be good? And
of course.
And you have to say, well, no, that is not only is that not a good idea in real life, but you have to, you built in all these ambivalent characters. That's the reason I always had ambivalent characters and ambivalent villains that like famously the Pied Piper, but because you don't want to just be able to just kill people off at random, as we're finding out now.
Yeah, you want there to be character growth to keep the characters around.
Yeah. So, you should be a DC publisher. You see,
I'd love it, but I always think about what I think about what Jack Kirby said about comics will break your heart, kid. I know it's just hearing this is just a reminder of how it can be. It sounds like a very thankless job. So
it's also better to be. The two things that really I thought made my career not only endurable but pleasant and fun was I had a book of my own that I cared about and that I'd already established by the time I started writing for DC. And then I was living in Michigan, so I wasn't part of the blood sport that took place, where all the editors got together and tried to kill each other on Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah.
So I would have to talk my friends who were editors at DC from throwing themselves out of the windows after those Wednesday meetings.
Cheers.
Jesus.
Well, on a lighter note, over to Zach on a question.
Yeah. Do you remember your plans for the strip had it been allowed to continue? Further developments for Bruce and Harvey, new returning villains, and we had been speculating that there was a cameo of Clayface in the final story, at least a lumpy-faced villain quoting Hamlet. So, yeah, do you remember any of your plans had the strip been able to continue?
Oh, it looks like I did have that idea. Yeah, that could be Clayface. It looks like I didn't really describe Clayface very well for
Carmine.
Carmine.
I feel like he should know better considering how long he was in comics.
Well, yeah. The other thing you should think about, though, when you think about his work here, was he was being heavily inked by inkers who loved him.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, so they were trying to fix things, and he had extremely bad arthritis, and he had, what did he have? He had that disease where you have to have your hands amputated on. That was what it was.
Jeez.
And so his hands were kind of healing through a lot of his work there, and the fact that like sometimes his, like Bruce Wayne's forehead was kind of slanted way back, and so that was partially Carmine's style, but it was also partially I think he was having a little trouble controlling things. But you know, I saw his work after this, and so I think his hands got better too. So that was more or less just a happy ending. But his but I do notice that I had Catwoman in one of those things.
I'll pull it up. Yep.
So I think in fact I was probably hoping that the next one was going to be Catwoman. And I see that I was referring to her as the Catwoman. I was that generation where it was a really good idea to be referring to Batman as the Batman. But on the other hand, Flash was not the Flash anymore. He was Flash. So we tried to keep things moving.
All right. John, you had the next one about sort of the strips and the collections.
Yeah. For years, I've wondered why this strip has never been collected, even though we've seen other reprints of other Batman strips, like from the 40s and also from the 60s. Without naming names, I can attest personally that one publisher has expressed interest in collecting and publishing them, but they cannot secure the go-ahead from the rights holder, whoever that is. I've tried inquiring at DC, but being just a no-name geek, I've never gotten any headway. Can you think of any reason why the strip has never been reprinted when all the others have?
You mean aside from this interview? No, I actually can't, because I've seen occasionally people for one reason or another have put excerpts, a panel or two, to say, oh, and Bill did this.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, DC went through the whole being switched from being Warner Books to being Warner Brothers to a bunch of other things. And so I have no idea who would actually be the rights holders. I don't know if it, because they may have had to have done something legal to be a part of Creators Syndicate. I don't know. Maybe Carmine got hold of a bigger chunk of the thing, because I don't know what. He was actually the publisher of DC for a while. So I have no idea what why that's never been reprinted. Of course, I was surprised when all my Wonder Women were suddenly reprinted.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an angel somewhere in DC watching out for me, or what. I don't really know what how I would vote on that. I don't know. I would always like to have something to sign at conventions. And my wife is still reminds me occasionally that I never showed her any of my comic strip work, any of the Batman strips, before they were published. So I would like to be able to have her have something that she could read.
Yeah.
Although the only reason that happened was just time. I mean, as I say, every I had to go through write 5 books, or the equivalent of 5 books, every 5 weeks. So you run along.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, you have the next question.
All right. Yeah. So moving on from that, you've been working in comics since 1981, and I was just wondering, which story or run do you consider your proudest accomplishment?
Journey.
Any hero journey?
Absolutely. Although I also when the publisher or prospective publisher of Piranha Press approached me, I pitched him pretty much just out of my head. Epicurus the Sage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the stuff that I came up with that nobody'd ever tried before. That really is the stuff that makes me happy. Amazonia was an idea that was mine all the way from the beginning to the end. Cool. And do we know Amazonia?
The Wonder Woman story? The Elseworlds one? The Wonder Woman Elseworlds story?
Yes.
That one has continued, that her outfit from that continues to be an iconic, recurring Wonder Woman alternate costume that I keep seeing. It has endured as a notable icon, very important Wonder Woman story.
Good. I'm so pleased. I could have stood if it was a little longer, but still, I think it was good. I think it held up. So.
I wanted to ask, actually, Journey is one that I actually really wanted to read, but I haven't had a chance because the collections that I can find online or the individual issues are kind of prohibitive. And I don't know, do you currently own the rights, and are you in any position to maybe try to get it put on digitally on perhaps Comixology/Amazon?
Oh, do you get paid for that?
If you're the rights holder, I believe you do.
Probably, yeah.
Well, there.
hope,
That's
yeah.
a thought. Yeah. Yes. Well, most of that stuff goes through Mike Jones, who is the publisher of Yeet. But and I think I could probably he's going to be back from Pennsylvania before too long, so I might ask him to look into that and see how that even works. I have not the slightest clue how that would work. I think we have all the issues.
Well, yes, I believe I've known a few independent creators who do publish through Comixology, which has now been purchased by Amazon, therefore be on the Kindle store. I do not know what kind of rigmarole that might be, but I would certainly love to see it commonly available to just purchase at the click of a button.
That's right. Or you could show up at conventions where I am, and they cost $5 an issue.
I would love to do that, but I am unfortunately stuck over here in Delaware currently, so it's kind of hard for me to get out anywhere.
Well, and I'm stuck in Michigan, so
unfortunately, yeah, I sympathize.
So, but yeah, let's think about this.
Right. Well,
at least find
here
out
first.
Yeah. I mean,
I do want to give you a bit of an opportunity to sort of plug a lot of your current stuff. I know that you've been going into independent comics. You mentioned Yeet. We even mentioned your YouTube channel, Yeet Presents, on our episode when covering that stuff. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to share with us a little bit about your current projects and where fans can find them and support you.
Well, we've talked about a couple of things. There's as I got almost completely through an autobiography that in comics that but it's mostly toned, and it's there's I have the script that I wrote. Sadly, because DC is DC, they literally could not stand the idea that I said, well, why don't I just do it the way I do all the comics that I do, which is, I'll letter a page and then I'll draw it, and then I'll write it, or I'll ink it, and then I'll tone it, and then it'll be done, and then I'll do the next one. Oh no, we can't do it that way. No, you have to have every stage of the process editorially approved. And so I sat and I did all of that, and we eventually got it all done, but I have to actually sit down with it, and because I have like pages that are all finished, but they don't have the lettering on them. So I have to figure out how to get the lettering onto the pages that are drawn and inked. So it's that kind of a thing that sort of held me off from getting that done. But that's like 120 pages, something like that, of an autobiography that I have. And we've been talking about doing that, and then we're talking about doing some. I have the next issue of Bliss Alley is almost done, and then I have various things that appear and have appeared in Yeet Presents, including Flake City, which is this was an idea of mine from a long time ago. You may not even remember this, but Dick Tracy, his adopted son Junior, became a cartoonist, and he did a strip called Sawdust, and basically it's just like little dots on the page, and then they do like horrible puns about wood. I wouldn't do that, would you? and stuff like that. But I always thought that was sort of a cute idea. It was actually an old cartoonist. All the old cartoonists were a little bitter about the new cartoonists who were doing a much simpler style, like Peanuts and that kind of thing. And so so that was his sort of take on modern comics. And but when I was doing every once in a while they'll ask me to do some teaching, and especially teaching writing of comics. And so what I've been trying to tell people is, you don't have to kill yourself. You might not even have to have a partner to collaborate with. You can have like Alan Moore did a strip called Maxwell the Magic Cat, and all it was him drawing Maxwell over and over and over again, but it was Alan Moore's dialogue going on in the cat's head. So it was brilliant stuff. And so I said, you don't have to kill yourself. You don't have to learn how to draw like Neil Adams in order to be able to write comics. So I suggested, so what I wanted to do was I created a strip called Flake City, which is just snowflakes. Living in Michigan actually helps this considerably, and there have been 4 or 5, maybe more pages of Flake City in Yeet Presents, and it just goes to show you that you can do sort of interesting things with very simple drawings. And you can, and it doesn't have to be with. It doesn't even have to be with snowflakes. It can be with, you can do many strokes like this, and you're doing the grass talking to each other, and so this was sort of my proof of concept that I would be able to show the kids how they could work simply and yet in a sophisticated way as well. So that's in Yeet, and there's a couple other things that I've done in Yeet. I have a story that I'd really like to get done before I die. That is the sons of the great old ones from the Cthulhu from mythos from H.P. Lovecraft.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be funny to have all the kids of these great old ones, and they are all interacting in high school as immigrants. And so I've got that kind of working too.
Mm.
But it's hard to get any of this done when you're when there's no way to get it paid for, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
And
is there?
Now I'm back to talking about money again. So,
Is there
Ghost.
a specific website then that people can go to help support you and buy your stuff? Is it the Yeet Presents website? Like, where would you recommend them go?
It's the Yeet Presents website. Actually, Mike set up a complete a thing where I also have all of my all the books. You can buy the books and send it, and where you can send books in to get them signed.
Mm-hmm.
And and I also actually a long time ago I had a page set up, FundMe.
The GoFundMe, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's still alive or not, but
well, we did try to donate, but it said that it was not currently accepting donations.
Yeah. I've forgotten how that worked. It was people, after things are set up for a certain amount of time, then they send you a whole bunch of legal boilerplate and say things that sound like they want you to commit to something, and I just never got around to doing it.
Gotcha.
But I'm my own worst enemy. But anyway, that's so yeah. I think the Yeet website, you can contact Mike Jones through that, and then we can you can see where we can go from there.
Awesome. I do want to thank Mike as well. So big thanks to Mike Jones, and as well as to Scott. His last, is it Mullen?
Mullen, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And both of them helped in bringing you on to this podcast. So wanted to give them a little bit of a shout out on the air. So we acknowledge that. And this has been great in terms of diving into the weeds with you on the Batman newspaper strip, and of course your other work as well. We'd love to bring you on again in terms of talking about Wonder Woman and the Flash and other stuff, as well as the future of Yeet Presents on that stuff. So that'd be awesome.
Bliss Alley. I'm a big fan of Bliss Alley. So I think you can probably only find 2 issues of that, but they are, as Spencer Tracy would say, churse.
Gotcha. All right. We'll go on the hunt for those then. But I guess until then, the rest of you guys have anything else before we wrap up?
I have one thing.
Sure.
I wanted to take your advice, what you were saying earlier about saying it when you have the time, and just thank you for. I realized that this was a relatively minor. The Batman comic strip was a relatively minor blip in your career. and it certainly sounds like it was a challenge. But I really love it. I've sought out so many comics with a hyper focus on Two-Face, and things bleed out from there. And so I just sought out this one just to be a completist, and I ended up absolutely loving it. I found it to be one of the most unique and refreshing takes and satisfying takes on a character where I have literally read every single thing of him. And even though I'm just grateful that it was not only so strong throughout, despite the challenges, despite having to write through the structure of the newspaper strip that you had to work with, but that it also ended satisfyingly in a way that sure seemed planned. I imagine it might not have been, but the fact that you were able to pull it off to make it seem complete and that's just miraculous, and it's wonderful. So I wanted to thank you for that, and how I would really love to see it get reprinted and get the recognition it deserves. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, John. I actually, once you get used to any kind of form, you should have if you talk to anybody who talks about writing comics, well, you're gonna have like bringing you're going to foreshadow what's going to happen on the next page, and you're going to foreshadow what's going to happen on the next page after that, and it sounds like it's a drudgery, but you get used to it very quickly. And the same thing with this thing where you have a whole where you have all these different rules, but once you get used to the rules, it isn't the drudgery that it sounds like.
Yeah, the structure helps, I imagine, in some ways.
It does. It actually does.
Yeah.
And thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just honored to have you on here. So,
and you are
very
the
much.
bed night, I guess.
As it says, yes. So, thank you very much for coming on. We'd love to have you back, and that is superhero stuff you should know. Newt commented on, is Batman the Long Halloween overrated? The last episode where we had John on, saying, quote, personally, I still really enjoy the Long Halloween, not for its story, but rather what it could have been, if that makes sense.
Okay.
It does, actually. I love the individual pieces. I love the idea of someone close to Harvey betraying him by committing the very acts that he once despised. That would have been interesting to explore. I love the idea of mob families being overthrown by essentially a bunch of nobodies, and I especially love the relationships that Batman has with these characters and how it can affect the story and himself. Yet, I can admit the ball was dropped here. There are so many flaws that could have been fixed if the story was tighter, if it focused more on what it was trying to do instead of having these loose threads, but overall, I really did enjoy it. I love being able to talk about what makes something work and its flaws at the same time. Well, welcome to our show. I first read this earlier this year, actually. I had been watching Batman the Animated Series with my husband, and I wanted to see more Two-Face stories. The first thing that my local comic shop did was recommend The Long Halloween. Not surprised. I had read comics before, but I was particularly invested in The Long Halloween for Harvey and his character arc. I've since then moved on to other stories, but I guess The Long Halloween will always have a place within me. Haven't watched you guys before. Checked you all out because About Faces retweeted you guys. Thank you, John. And I'm glad I did. All right. Thank you, Newt. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Newt, age
Newt.
16,
Oh,
Hollywood,
the oldest one.
California.
Yeah.
Wow.
Rancho Cucamonga.
Next one is on the Hulk stuff, which I think John might be interested in chiming in as well on this. So we did an episode on the Unmade Hulk script by Jonathan Hensley called What If the Hulk Was Made in the 90s was the episode. Will Moore commented saying, quote, "As a massive Hulk fan, I really appreciate you guys making this video. I'd love to hear more about this character and many more on the channel. I'd also love to hear about the 2003 book adaptation of the Hulk film as well. It sounds interesting. I'm going to have to dig that back up. The Peter David novelization is back in my hometown, but I'll be sure to reread it. And it's probably like this thick, so it's going to take a while for me to get to that, guys. Keep up the great work. If you're interested in reading some awesome Hulk comics, highly recommend Immortal Hulk. It's dark, it's scary, and emotional as hell."
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I've heard only good things about that.
I love it. It is one of the best comic runs I've read in recent memory. I say with this is no faint praise. It is the closest I've read to a successor to Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Damn. High praise there.
I really loved it. I may have some thoughts on how the ending might have stuck the landing, but overall, man, it is so great. And also, it's like, if I wish I could read a Two-Face story that good, because it plays with so much the same things that I want to see in a really great Two-Face story, and it ties into the Hulk's history all throughout, all the way back to his earliest appearances, and it's great. It's great. So yeah, I second this recommendation wholeheartedly.
Nice. All right, we'll have to check it out. All right, next one is from Zoo Entertainment, saying this is a comment on our ranking the Arkham Asylums in live action film and television episode that we had, where I talked about the Arkham Asylum in Titans being in the real life Guelph Institute. Zoo Entertainment says, quote, "Greetings from Canada. Ben did get the pronunciation, did not pronounce pronunciation correctly, of Guelph correct in his first and last attempts. It's pronounced Guelph. By the way, I'm loving these shows. Keep it up, guys." All right. Thank you.
Ah, Canadian.
Ah, yes. We're expanding.
Exotic.
Yes.
Exotic. Oh, man.
All right. Over to you, Andrew.
Oh, shit, guys. It's that time once again where we thank Shasta, Leom O, Super Imperman, Douglas P. Dandy, Aaron Willett, Nick Noir, Jesse E., Jeffrey R., Scott V., Asgers Webb, Jeremy H., Alex of the What Mean Podcast, What Spelled W-U-T, Ian Justice, Jared P., Paul C., Jamie H., Rochelle L., Tara M., and Michael S. Want to also thank, those are our Patreon supporters, by the way, and then we have our other supporters, Sparkageddon, SECT Productions, Robert Schumann, Kuki Noms, Matt Herring, Elijah B., Shamrock Balls, Ian H., Walter, The Wobot, John Wells, Rye Guy, Jackson Putnam, and Tway N, of course. And please join the Patreon. The $1 tier gets you that there shout out. The $5 tier gets you a whole other show every Friday. And the $10 tier brings you to the monthly meetup. And that's where we have a good old time with the fans. Where we chuckle at Batman-related things all together, or DC or comic-related, but mostly Batman. And yeah, then check out the Superhouse merch at Redbubble and Threadless.com. And
I forgot to remind you about Zacula.
God damn it, every fucking week, man. It's fucking just, I cannot remember.
I think I'll die of shock if it ever actually shows up.
It's on one of them.
I'll be like,
It's on one of them. It's on Redbubble. Threadless gave us guff, though, about you, man.
Man.
Send me one with different hair. I think that was the issue. That's what's happening there. What the fuck am I trying to say? Anyway, mugs, shirts, shower curtains, all by Stefan Santa Cruz. And please send us audio of anything. I'm fucking anything at this point, guys. It's been so long. You know, the only person that's ever done this has been Zach. We've been doing this for years.
A few other people, but mainly Zach.
No, mainly Zach. Yeah, that's true. Forgive me. There have been a few others, but like
noms, yeah.
Yeah, it is true. But like complete randos from the internet, other than Zach, because he was a rando at first.
That's right.
Like it's been like nothing. So please send us a little something, man.
Just fart into a microphone and he'll put it up there. I mean,
that'd be great.
Literally anything.
If it's an original fart, not from fucking on the YouTube audio library, Well, at this point, we'll put it on. It could be really anything, guys. Send your audio to superhousepodcast@gmail.com. And then I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. Thunderwolf Lives on YouTube. ThunderwolfDrew.com has my portfolio. Check that out. And then AmanoRecon.com, everybody. AMANORECON.com. It's R-rated. It's sci-fi. It's comedy. It's horror. Did I say that? Anyway, it's got a Power Rangers influence, but it's not a fan film. And it's got X-Files and Stranger Things DNA in there as well. And we're making it. This is the poster by Zach here in the YouTube. And you'll see more very soon. It's going to be an Indiegogo campaign. And yeah, I could say more, but I'm not right now. But yeah, check out that campaign's coming. And Indiegogo is like Kickstarter, but for short film, indie films and shit. So yeah, that's it. Ben?
Shout out to Comic Capital on Instagram, as well as the Everything Entertainment Club on Clubhouse. Meanwhile, you can check us out on social media at Twitter at SuperhousePod, Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod, TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, Vero, Superhero Stuff Pod. My website is benjuanwriter.com. My YouTube channel is in the description below. My personal Instagram is benjuanwriter, while my son's Instagram, yes, my furry ginger cat Alfie, is at Alfie Pennyworth Cat, where you can see him dressed up in bat wings. He was very unhappy about that. He whined the entire time. If you also have an Alfie that you like to terrorize with bat wings, like me, then you can go to Whiskerbox. Whiskerbox is the only cat box for the crazy cat lady and gent, and we have a special link that you can use in order to get some goodies, as well as the BarkBox, y'all. If you have a dog, then you can do the same thing and get a box that's basically worth $35 for free in the first month. And that is over at superherostuffpod.com/shop, where you can find those special links, as well as all the other merch that we've been talking about, the Threadless links, the eBay affiliate stuff, where you can buy a lot of Batman merchandise, Amazon links. That's all over at superherostuffpod.com/shop. Over to Zach.
Woo! Well, if you want to see more artworks by myself, if you want to contact me about doing some artworks for you, just go to ZacharyJacksonBrownArt.com. And you can also follow me on the YouTubes, on the TikToks, and on the Instagrams. Just look up Zachary Jackson Brown Art, and you can see more of my arts.
Good arts, man.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent
Tasty.
arts. Tasty arts.
And then over to John.
And I am on About Faces, my dash faces, not slash. My girlfriend corrected me about that one when I accidentally said that on the first one. About Dash Faces on Tumblr and also Twitter, and where the hell else I'll be able to go next once the next new hot social media thing comes along, whatever. I shall be About Faces as long as I possibly can, anywhere and everywhere.
And also the Batman Daily.
Batman Daily, where you can read the very strips that we had discussed here. They are current. They were posted day to day, so you have to click to scroll back to the very beginning and then read them backwards, which is not the most convenient way, but I'm really, really hoping we'll someday get these properly published like they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So catch it while you can before it's on Comixology.
Here's hoping, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to want you guys to do us a favor.
I want you to tell all your friends about us.
Ending broadcast.
Woo! Woo!
Superhero Stuff You Should Know is part of the Greenlit Podcast Network.